Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Sunday, October the 11th, 2020. On this edition of the Politicrat, more voting information for you to use, and how to talk to an undecided pro-life voter. That coming up next.
This year's election is going to be a little different.
Instead of one election day, we now have a voting season.
That special time of year when polls can open weeks before election day.
When your mailbox can become a voting booth.
When how you vote is just as important as who you vote for.
How, when, and where to cast your ballot depends on your state.
'Tis the season to be prepared.
This year, plan your vote.
Welcome back. And if you listened to the end of yesterday's episode, you will have heard some breaking news. And it literally came in right after I finished recording the episode. And the breaking news was in Pennsylvania, a huge victory handed to Democrats and Joe Biden. Because what happened there was that a federal court judge in Pennsylvania ruled that the state's ballot box drop-off system was not illegal. It was perfectly lawful, which means that any drop-off boxes in the state are perfectly fine for drop-off for mail-in ballots. Donald Trump's lawyers were arguing, no, drop-off boxes are illegal. We can't have those because there's voter fraud involved. And the judge absolutely smacked those lawyers down. The judge declared that these drop boxes were perfectly legal. It was a 128-page opinion, which I have not read, but I do plan to leaf through that. And if I can find the link, I will include it in the liner notes of this episode. But the judge in the federal district court emphatically said that Donald Trump's campaign and the Republican Party had not proved any kind of fraud whatsoever, and their arguments were based on possibilities and assumptions, not anything articulable or anything in evidence. Therefore, shut up, go home, and get out of my courtroom. I don't want to hear this. Pretty much is the nice way of putting what I just said. There was just no basis upon which Donald Trump's campaign or the Republican Party put forth this legal challenge. Frivolous. And you heard State Representative of Pennsylvania, Malcolm Kenyatta, also on yesterday's episode as he was talking to Ali Velshi on Friday about these frivolous lawsuits that the Trump campaign is bringing not only to Pennsylvania, but they're doing this all across the country. So that is good news for people who support the Democratic Party, people who are Joe Biden supporters. That is really good news because there is no justification for eliminating drop boxes in the state of Pennsylvania. It's just absolutely ridiculous. There's no legal basis upon which to say these are illegal things. This is the proper part of the democratic voting process. Small d, democratic. There is nothing wrong with drop boxes. There is no inherent voter fraud. I think as people are fully aware by now, voter fraud is something that happens once in a blue moon. There have literally been about 50 cases of it in a 20-year period, if that. 50 cases in 20 years. I mean, it's such a minuscule, out of billions of votes. And that 0.000005% is being used and wasted on lawsuits. It just makes no sense. It's just strictly a voter suppression measure. Donald Trump's campaign has already won in Pennsylvania in terms of saying that you've got to avoid the naked ballot situation. They've already won that round of legal challenges in the state of Pennsylvania. And now they were trying to get rid of all drop boxes. I mean, this is absolutely voter suppression. This is an impediment to delaying the process of returning your ballot. They are doing everything they can, but do not be deterred. We have now nearly 9 million people in this country who have already cast their vote. And no dirty trick or tactic from the Republican Party or Donald Trump is going to stop them from voting. In fact, it's going to motivate them even more to vote. When you put roadblocks in front of Americans in particular, you're telling me I can't vote? What? They're going to be motivated to vote. There had been reports over the weekend of people who hadn't voted before and that they made up the bulk of a lot of these early votes. A number of people, and I forget how many, so I don't want to say the number in terms of, for fear of mischaracterizing it. There were a healthy number of people voting out of this 8.5 million or so. And that healthy number consists of people who did not vote 4 years ago. And that can only be a good thing for the Democratic Party, because what that says to me is one of three things, or maybe all three of the following things. One, these are first-time voters who have been registered. Two, these are people who sat home 4 years ago and have now been energized to vote. Or three, people are determined to get their ballots in early and just do not want any kind of tie-up on November 3rd. And there's other reasons, but those are the three for me that ring loudest. Because of the post office situation, that's number three. So what you're seeing now are people voting, and yes, so far the statistics suggest and show that the Democratic Party voters are the ones who are making up most of that group of early voters. But again, we still have now 23 voting days remaining. And it is very important to stay focused here, as we are just over 3 weeks of voting away from the last day of voting, which of course is November the 3rd. And I really would hope that if you haven't voted yet, please vote when your state starts early voting. Make it the first day of early voting. Please do that. And if you can't vote in person, make sure that you drop off your ballot at a drop box. You can do that now in Pennsylvania. You can keep going. These Republicans will try anything to stop you from voting. And they say they believe in freedom. Well, freedom means also being able to vote unimpeded. Freedom means being able to have a country where people who have paid their debt to society as felons can vote without having to be impeded. Freedom means allowing people to vote and not making up these ridiculous these robocalls with black women saying, you can't, don't let the man stop you. You know, that kind of garbage, right? The man, have some as a black woman's voice, right? And she's on this robocall. Your parking tickets are gonna, if you get robocalls, you got to ignore them. You cannot be held back from voting. If you get a phone call telling you that your parking tickets and your taxes are going to be subject to this and that, and if you haven't paid your taxes, you can't vote, that's BS. You can vote no matter what your tax situation is. There is no law in any state that forbids a person from voting if they are behind on their taxes. There's just no law. And it's just false. And it's an attempt to intimidate you and suppress your vote and suppress your voice. Keep that in mind, please. Do not pay attention to any kind of robocall that is telling you you can't vote, because if you do, any outstanding taxes you owe, the IRS will come after you. No, that's not true. They won't come after you if you vote. So, look, all the dirty tricks that Republicans are playing are in vogue right now in this voting season. In vogue for them, because that's what they do best, cheat and steal. Joe Biden even referred to this during a speech in Erie, Pennsylvania yesterday.
But end of the day, we come together. I am more optimistic about America's chances today than I've ever been. Why? Because I think the blinders have been taken off. People have realized what's really at stake here. I think we can pull this together. I'm optimistic. I really genuinely am. But here's the deal, guys. We got to go out and make sure you vote, because the only way we lose this is by the chicanery going on relative to polling places. This whole idea, not a single solitary reasonable person in either party has said mail-in ballots are corrupt. No evidence, but he's trying to make it sound that way. Trying to put people in polling places. The same guys you saw standing, blocking people's way in Virginia with banners and rifles slung across their shoulders. Folks, it's not who we are. We're so much better than this. So I say to you all, God bless you all. Let's go out and vote, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Chicanery is exactly the word I would use when it comes to the Republicans. And you heard it. Joe Biden sounding very confident the only way that we can lose this is if there's chicanery on the other side. And that's exactly right. So if you get a robocall, whether it's on your phone or they leave a message with you and they say something like what I've just said, and this has been happening in Michigan and in other states, make sure you either record that call, send it to your Secretary of State in your state, make sure that that person is aware of it so that you get it to them, and also put it on social media, quite frankly. Let people be aware. Do a public service to let people know that this is what happened. You got this phone call telling you that you can't vote. You've got to be careful because if you vote, your taxes are going to be put in. That's just not true. That is illegal. It is illegal for any kind of voice message like that to be made, actually. And you are threatening voters. That's voter intimidation. That's threatening a voter. And that is illegal. You cannot do anything to intimidate or impede voters. Just like you cannot have Trump supporters standing in Virginia and in other places blocking entrances or standing near entrances with guns and their flags. That is all an intimidation tactic. And this story about 50,000 ex-military or current military or whatever, retired military being recruited by True the Vote and all these organizations that are really voter suppression organizations that are right-wing organizations. All of that stuff is an attempt to intimidate. in most states, voters are not allowed to have weapons in the voting booth you can see how that's disastrous. Now, in some states, I think Michigan may be one of them. Michigan, oh dear. There may be situations like this, but there will be law enforcement presence. Now, for some people, law enforcement will be here, so I'll feel safe. And of course, for others of us, law enforcement anywhere is a threat to our safety. Just ask Jonathan Price, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks. I could go on. But this kind of intimidation, none of this stuff is allowed. It is illegal. So please keep an eye on this. Do not be deterred from voting. And I think the best way to avoid any kind of scenario like these things is to vote early, whether that's in person, which I think is a really good idea, or whether it is by the mail, which a lot of people are doing here in California. People are voting by mail. People are dropping off their ballots in drop boxes here. They're also using the United States Postal Service. But many people are, of course, understandably wary about the post office. So there was internal memos actually over the last few days released by the USPS to the media. And those memos are showing that, yes, there's been slowdowns. So if you are going to vote early, make sure that you do it now. And make sure that if you're going to do it by mail, that you do send that ballot back immediately, and preferably by Dropbox, or drop it off at your local county board of elections office. That's even better. Remember, you can track your ballot. Remember that. Almost every state has this ability where you can go online and track your ballot. It's here in California. It's in many states across the country. Almost every single state does this. And on the voter guide that I have, which is attached to my Twitter page as a pinned tweet at the popcorn, REEL, you will see a list. And that list will include, in almost every state, a way to track your ballot. You can click on the link and track your ballot. It's just really easy. And here in California, it's just comprehensive. Their system of tracking ballots is really great. So again, as I said yesterday, do not worry about the integrity of voting. The voting systems are very good in this country. They have improved. They can certainly improve some more. And that's what these two infrastructure bills were earlier last year. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the House Democrats passed both of those pieces of legislation, which promptly, surprise, surprise, got blocked in the United States Senate by Mitch McConnell. But I'm telling you, the voting systems are very strong, very strong. So please do not be fooled or seduced or dissuaded or allow yourself to be lied to like this by Donald Trump, who is really the only person saying, oh, this is rigged. It's not rigged. Everybody knows it, including him. He votes by mail himself. How is he going to get away with that? Are you going to let him get away with that? With another con? Are you, the voter, going to allow Donald J. Trump, J for jumpsuit, to con you? Are you going to allow him to con you? He votes by mail. He's even telling his supporters to vote by mail. He's sending out robocalls and tweets. And his organization is sending out tweets. His son is sending out tweets. Vote by mail. He's sending these tweets to all of these states. Vote by mail. His organization, so I think it's Team Trump or something. And they're tweeting out, vote by mail, North Carolina. This is just so insidious. Talking out of both sides of his orange mouth. That's what's happening here. Same thing as he did with the pandemic. In February, on February 7th, behind closed doors with Bob Woodward, it's, oh yes, this is really dangerous, Bob. Oh, this is a killer, Bob. This is very dangerous, Bob. This is very dangerous. This is deadly, Bob. This coronavirus, ooh, this virus is deadly. And at the same time, to you, the general public, oh, it's going to go away. By April, it'll be gone. 15 will be down to 0. This is like a bad flu. It's just a flu. Talking out of both sides of his mouth. So please get out there and vote. As I said yesterday, institutions need to be defended. I know not every one of these institutions has been good or even great for black folk and brown folk and native folk. And that's where we have to improve them or completely change them. But change them on our terms, not on the terms of a dictator who wants to actually take your voice completely so that you don't vote at all. I mean, if you sit home and you don't vote, you're doing that to yourself. And people in 2016, there was a cross-section of them who suppressed themselves by not voting at all. And quite frankly, not voting also includes going to the ballot box and leaving a race blank on your ballot. And to the people who are doing things like that, you're wasting your vote. You are wasting your time. And you know what else you're doing? You are allowing, if you're leaving the White House race blank, that's a vote for Donald Trump too. If you don't vote at all in that particular race, but you vote all the way down ballot, you are also handing Donald Trump an extra vote. If you leave your ballot blank in that race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, believe me, that is a vote for Donald Trump. That is one less vote that Joe Biden does not get. And I really do hope that the people who, and it's a small number of people, but the people who are doing that really should just rethink that strategy. I do think, honestly, that the people who are doing this, if they're sincerely doing it, I think many of them are either disillusioned with the process or very privileged. They're privileged people who are doing well, who, while they may have a legitimate, and certainly there are legitimate reasons to feel disheartened by a two-party system, what I think is happening for many of these people, and that's just my guess, is that they're privileged and that they're well off and that they don't have any real stake. If Joe Biden wins, okay, they're satisfied with that in the sense that financially nothing's going to happen to them. If Donald Trump wins, they're satisfied with that because if they're well off, they're not going to have to worry about the taxes. But I'm telling you, there is no time to be playing this kind of game. Not this election. In fact, not any election, but especially this one. If you're not voting for Joe Biden at this point, you are acquiescing to these last 4 years. These last 4 years of throwing brown people in concentration camps, separating them from their families, torturing them, raping them, brutalizing them, killing them. You are okay with travel bans against Muslims. You are okay with cutting Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. That means you are okay with curtailing a woman's right to choose. That means you are okay with getting out of peace treaties and climate accords. That means you are okay with having someone on a Supreme Court who can get rid of a woman's right to choose and get rid of the Affordable Care Act, that means you are okay with someone who does nothing as Putin puts bounties on the heads of U.S. soldiers and military personnel. That means you are okay with someone who calls people who fought and died for this country losers and suckers. I could go on for another 15 to 20 minutes. But that is what you're saying, whether you agree with that or not. When you leave that ballot blank at the top of the ticket, and you have a clear chance to send a message to Donald Trump that he is not welcome in this country, much less the White House, then you are in full support with your non-vote and leaving that blank. You are in full support of Donald Trump. And this show of protest, because you feel so principled, is not a show of principle or protest. It is a show of complicity. By the way, if you know somebody who is thinking about leaving the election ticket race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump blank, please make sure that you listen to them and then make sure that you tell them why they should not engage in this act of madness, because quite frankly, that is madness. Welcome back. I know that people will say, well, how dare you call it madness? But it really is. I'm sorry, it is. Everybody has their personal choice. People vote for all kinds of reasons. People don't vote for all kinds of reasons. But for you not to be voting in the presidential race is just absolutely negligent at best. You cannot expect everything to be black and white, because it never really is. But you know what? This election kind of is black and white. You've got two very stark choices. One person wants to get rid of the country and get rid of your rights. The other person wants to improve the country and push it beyond where it is now to something a whole lot better. And that is also done with our help. The notion that one person alone can do this is utter folly. And quite frankly, you can do this on the state level at a really efficient way, on a really efficient level, I should say, by making sure you do vote in all of these state races. But that does not give you the excuse to leave blank the presidential race. That's just really ridiculous. You know, when people say all it takes is for evil to triumph is for good people to remain silent. Well, that is exactly what you're doing if you do not choose Joe Biden. If you do not vote for him and you think, oh, I'm just going to leave this blank, that is facilitating the evil that we have seen here over these last 4 years. That is as plainly as I can put it. Why throw away your vote? Again, this is to a small number of people out there. Why throw away your vote? There are generations of people. There are young people out here. Maybe you don't care about young people. Maybe you don't care about kids. Maybe you don't care about what the future's going to be like after you've gone. Because there are people out here who are like, well, you know, I'm in a certain age in my life. I don't give a rat's ass. Who cares? I'm not going to be here anyway. There is a mindset like that in this country. Not amongst a lot of people, but there is a small subset, I think, of people who think that way. Completely selfish. They don't give a rat's. Well, I'm not going to be here anyway, so what do I care about the climate? What do I care? They'll have to deal with it. And that's the attitude, by the way, of a lot of people in power. Like Mitch McConnell and the others in that Republican Party, which is really a criminal party, as I have said before. We have to resist this selfishness. And I get it, as I said, everybody votes for very different reasons, very deeply personal reasons. I'm not mocking that. But what I am really cautioning and really am coming out vigorously against is the notion that you're going to write in a candidate. No one gives a rat's about your writing choice. That person ain't going to win. John Bolton's doing this too. I'm going to write in some Republican. I'm going to write in a dead man. I was thinking of writing in Ronald Reagan. He actually said that last week on CNN. He's thinking of writing in Ronald Reagan. I mean, is that what we died for in this country? Really? We died for the right for you to freaking well write Ronald Reagan's name in? Guy's been dead almost 30 years. Give me a break. Are we serious? He's been dead 20 years or whatever it is. And that's what we died for? That's what people died for? Really? That's what people got beat up for on the Edmund Pettus Bridge? That's what black women fought for and white women fought for? Really? In the 1900s? So that some idiot can write in someone's name? So that John Bolton, the coward who, my book is The Room Where It Happened. And, the room where it happened in January and February this year when there was a bloomin' impeachment trial going on, a sham trial by McConnell. And I just couldn't testify because I wanted to make money off my book. And now I'm going to write in maybe Reagan or some bloomin' Republican in the backwaters of wherever. Really? And you feel really proud of yourself. That's not participating. That's navel gazing. And you can get upset all you want and say, how dare you? But I'll say, how dare you? You got a country that may not freaking exist if this guy gets in again. And your response to that is to say, well, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden? Really? Makes no sense whatsoever. You've got so many issues in this country. So many. And selfishness is not an option. Welcome back. So I want to let you know again of some voter registration deadlines for this coming week. This week, on Tuesday, that's October the 13th to you, Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, in general, the D.C. District of Columbia, the states of Maine, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, Oregon, Virginia, and West Virginia all have their deadline on the 13th. October the 13th, this Tuesday, is the last day to register to vote in each of those locations, those states, and D.C. that I have just read to you. I'll repeat them in a moment. D.C., Maine, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, Oregon, Virginia, and West Virginia. If you are in those states, this coming Tuesday, October 13th, is the last day that you can register to vote for the 2020 November 3rd general election. That is something that I cannot emphasize enough. I will be reminding you again in tomorrow's episode, because it's just really important now. We need to have more people voting, not less. And by the way, this coming Friday, October 16th, in Nebraska, you folks in Nebraska, the good people in Nebraska, you have that as your last day to register to vote. That's the deadline. Do not wait until the deadline. Please make sure that you register to vote. Thank you very much for doing that, and spread the word. Anybody you know in these states, ask them, and make sure you tell them to register to vote, but ask them if they're registered. Please do. And remind them that the registration deadline is in those dates I've given you. I want to just talk about early in-person voting. And in many of these cases, I mean, there may be one or two cases where voting is going on by mail already, absentee voting, which is the same as voting by mail. But there are actually, I mean, Utah also may be an asterisk here, but in general, each of these states that you're going to hear me read out right now will start early in-person voting this week. In-person voting. Utah may, and also I believe, is it Utah? Maybe Utah and one other state here that you may have to still call in and check out when. But generally speaking, each of these states will be doing early in-person voting. On my voting guide, which I've told you is on my Twitter page at the Popcorn REEL, you, as a pinned tweet, you can find the phone numbers and the email addresses and the websites to each of these states, and you'll be able to get more information. Call your local county board of elections. I have links to all of those locations and maps where you can click on your county in your state. And if you don't know what the name of your county is, there's a way that you can type in your address, I think, in a lot of these websites that I've linked to that are all official, run by the states who run these elections, and you can find out what your county is. So there are ways for you to get information, and you can find out exactly when in your county you can get to early vote this week. And so here I go now with the names of the states that will be early voting this week. Starting on Tuesday, early voting in person this week, October 13th, Tuesday, Kentucky, Texas, and Utah, all voting in person early. That will be happening on Tuesday. Then the following day, October 14th, Wednesday, Kansas and Tennessee will be doing in-person voting. The following day, Thursday, October the 15th, it's North Carolina's turn to go in person. Of course, North Carolina began this whole thing 5 weeks ago when they did their mail-in ballots, and they started to receive mail-in ballots and turn them in on September 4th. That's when election season began. So we have 2 full months of election season. And North Carolina, who kicked it off with the mail-in voting, will be doing in-person voting beginning this Thursday, October 15th. On Friday, October 16th, Washington State will do in-person voting, and they do largely vote by mail. So that's something that they will be doing. Now, Washington, what they will do, I think, is they do have scenarios there, I think, where they can actually return the drop-off ballot to someone in person, whether it's your local county board of elections in the county there, in one of the counties in Washington State, or whether it's a drop-off. But you can do early in-person voting there beginning this Friday, October the 16th as well, as far as I know. And this is all according to the websites and my guide, which I got all this information from the official secretaries of state. And finally, this coming Saturday, October the 17th, Massachusetts, Nevada, and New Mexico all start their early in-person voting. So I just want to emphasize those. I will repeat that information. Coming up, I will also put this information in the liner notes because I think it's important to remind people, and the deadline, the registration deadlines, I think it's very important to remind people of this information because there's still lots of people who haven't voted yet. So I want to just say thank you for bearing with me, and also for some of the comments that I've been receiving about early voting, and also questions that I've been being asked about it, also in person. I mean, people have actually stopped me because, again, I told you I wear the Vote Early t-shirt, and they have asked me about early voting. And speaking of which, you can get your Vote Early t-shirt from the Politicrat online store at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. There are 7 different colors to choose from. Look bright, look sharp, and send an important message to vote early. It's really important to do it to jog the memories of the everyday person who may not realize that we are now in early voting season in the particular state you're in, or just that you need to get activated to go and vote. This is an election where you cannot afford to sit home or write in or leave something blank. You have to get out there and vote. This is about looking at an institution and bolstering it with your participation in it. That's how you strengthen the institution, as both Timothy Snyder and Ruth Ben-Ghiat have said in the past. And that is how you ensure that we have a functioning voting process that needs to be strengthened, of course, but we need to participate in it. Part of strengthening it is getting more people to vote. And as long as you're registered to vote, which is very important, as long as you're registered to vote, you can vote. Make sure that you pay special attention to the voting rules of your state. And make sure you head to the Politicrat online store for the Vote Early Color Collection t-shirts. You can see them, and they will make a really colorful impression on you. They're in red and in purple and coral, and they're in yellow and mint green, and you name the colors, black, everything. I mean, there'll be more colors to come in the next few days, and there'll be kid sizes. In fact, there's sizes in all sizes from XXL down to small. Women's t-shirts and unisex t-shirts, all of them are available at the Politicrat online store right now at really good prices too. So check it out. It's in the liner notes, the link, but you can also go there right now at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. Next, how to talk to an undecided pro-lifer. We are now 23 voting days away from the final day of this election season. The politics are clear, but your objective is clearer, and that is to vote. I want to talk now about how to talk to an undecided pro-life voter. In the course of phone banking, and I've been doing that, and I urge you to do it too if you haven't. Phone banking is a really good way to get in touch with people that you don't know in other parts of this country that you otherwise would probably never ever meet. To talk to them for a few short minutes, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute, depending on the disposition of the person you reach on that phone call. But usually you want to keep these calls to about a minute to a minute and a half at the very most. If the person that you're calling is hostile to you, then you just move on. You say, have a good day, and you move on. Or they may have already hung up on you by the time you get to say that. They may have already had hung up on you. So that happens too. People are, especially in the middle of this pandemic, People are, as I said, people are on edge. We're all on edge to a degree. I mean, Kate McKinnon last night on Saturday Night Live. I mean, that's an example. She actually was doing some skit with Colin Jost on the Weekend Update. I don't even really watch Saturday Night Live that much anymore. I used to watch it when it was really good back in the late 70s, early 80s, and into the 90s too, and it was actually quite decent still. But now, I'm sorry, it's just not the same. Although Kate McKinnon is still the best person on that show. I mean, she's brilliant. And so they were doing this skit, and she went overboard a little bit or whatever, and Colin Jost asked her, Kate, he broke character. Kate, are you all right? And then she said, obviously I'm not okay, It's like, which is the way we all are, right? We all have these varying levels of whatever it might be, anxiety, confusion, fear, uncertainty. We're not sure of this or that. We're on pins and needles for this blooming election. We don't have any idea what shenanigans this guy's going to pull next. And, we know that Bill Barr's been so damn silent for a week. And when you have Bill Barr silent for a blooming week as the Attorney General, something's in the pipeline. There's there's a billion things, even beyond the election, of course. Your everyday life, what's going on there, right? There's a million pieces that are popping around. And so you're trying to figure out what is the next move on this chessboard. And so into all of that is this phone banking. And I urge everybody to phone bank. And whether it's for Joe Biden, whether it's for another Democratic candidate, you should really phone bank. You do get to talk to people. And so I got to talk to a person who said that she was a pro-life voter but was undecided. And I said to her, I don't like everything about Joe Biden, and no voter is ever going to like everything about any candidate. There's no candidate in the history of the world who lines up with every single thing you believe in or stand for. It just doesn't happen, right? If your spouse or your partner and you do not agree on everything, how are you expecting the politician that you vote for to agree with you on everything, or for you to like everything that they do if you don't like everything your spouse does? And there is this tendency for us to kind of, we're expecting this person to completely line up with everything. And if, particularly on the Democratic side, if there is one or two things that person stands for that we don't like, off with their head. It's basically, I hate to use that kind of imagery, but that is the mentality, particularly in the Democratic Party, amongst some of the voters. If they don't line up with us on this particular issue, oh my goodness, we're going to just throw them out completely. It's like a spoiled ballot. We're going to just throw out the whole damn thing. I contend that is a mistake. And so I got to speak with a voter, pro-life voter, over the telephone. And the bottom line is that I said to her that, look, there are things about Joe Biden that I don't like. And there's some big issues that I vigorously disagree with him on. He doesn't support Medicare for all. I think that's very important. He advocates a continuation of Obamacare, but a public option to give private insurance a chance. And, I have a huge problem with that. I do. He wants to extend and strengthen Obamacare. I don't have a problem with that. But he does not agree with Medicare for all, which would be much cheaper than anything that Joe Biden is actually advocating. So I told her that, number one. Number two, I said to her that, he doesn't believe in the Green New Deal. And I think that's also a mistake. And then I added, number three, that he also is someone who will not ban fracking. Huge problem with that. And I said to her that all of these things are pro-life issues. I said to her that pro-life, and I said to her I respected her beliefs and her views. I just wanted to add, and I said to her, but I want you to consider pro-life being an extension not just of a choice that a woman makes, but pro-life also includes what happens to that child after it is born. That is something that Joe Biden will do much better on than Donald Trump will, or some third party vote will. Joe Biden will actually give that child who is born health care protection under Obamacare until that child reaches the age of 26. Joe Biden will actually support school kids going to school for free if they are in a community college. They can go tuition free to that school for 2 years. That's pro-life. Joe Biden will support in terms of reforming police and changing the culture of police. He's for that. He doesn't want to defund the police. He said it over and over. As I said to this voter, she was someone who was asking about that. And I said, he doesn't want to defund the police. He wants to reform them and change the culture of policing. That's what he's advocated. That's a pro-life position. And the other guy is not pro-life at all. I said to her, Donald Trump is not pro-life. He says that he is, but he's not. In 1999, I told her, there was an interview with Tim Russell. I played it earlier this past week in one of the episodes. I played audio from it where Donald Trump, and it's in the episode where it was called Where They Stand on the Issues, A Woman's Right to Choose, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. That's the name of the episode, roughly. You can search that. It was in the last week or so on the podcast. And Tim Russ is asking him, where do you stand? And Donald Trump said, I'm pro-choice all the way. Now the guy, now I'm pro-life. Now women should be punished. He said that to Chris Matthews in March 2016 on MSNBC during a forum, town hall with an audience there. Now he canceled. Now he doesn't want to be in front of audiences. That's why he can't. That's why he's not going to this debate. It's not about, why can't we do it in person? It's about he doesn't want to face the voters. He knows that Joe Biden's not going to debate him in the same blooming location when Trump has coronavirus. Come on. He knows that. Anyway. So I told her about this interview that Donald Trump did with Tim Russell. I said, you can look that up on YouTube. And I said, Donald Trump changes his mind on everything. He doesn't have any ideology. His only ideology is Trump. That is what his ideology is. He's not pro-life because if he were pro-life, he wouldn't have murdered 216,000 people in this country. He wouldn't have murdered 216 people. Excuse me. He would not have murdered. This is not funny. He would not have murdered 216,000 people. I can shoot someone in Fifth Avenue and not lose a single voter. That is not a pro-life guy. And that is what I said to her. This guy told Bob Woodward in February of this year that he knew how deadly this virus was, as I said earlier. And I said this to the voter. And at the same time, he was telling you and me that this virus was not a big deal. It was going to go away by April. 15 cases would be down to close to zero. He didn't give help to the people who needed it with the ventilators. People had equipment that was not any good. They had to use Halloween masks, these doctors and nurses. And nearly 1,000 of them have died, if not more. And there's still issues with PPE. That is pro-life. That's a pro-life issue. And he is not pro-life. He's pro-death. So the bottom line is that as I was talking to this particular pro-life undecided voter, what I was trying to convey to her is that I respect, most importantly, her position. Now, personally, I don't agree with the pro-life faction. And their view of pro-life is very narrow. It's about you can't get to make a choice. That this baby must come into the world, no matter what. No matter what. Never mind whether there's rape, never mind whether there's incest. The classic pro-life, quote unquote classic, pro-life position is that no matter what, the sanctity of life is so important. And I agree the sanctity of life is important. But what I was trying to convey to that pro-life undecided voter is that pro-life is something that continues past the birth of a human being. And that must continue on to their development as children and their development as adults. That's what I was saying to her. Pro-life does not end at birth. It continues on, and what the Republicans have done and what Donald Trump has done has tried to get rid of health care for those children that would be born, try to get rid, and he wants to get rid of pre-existing conditions. So if you've got COVID-19 and you're a young 6-month-old child, and he eliminates these pre-existing condition protections and eliminates Obamacare, that 6-month-old can die. Because he wants to get rid of particularly Obamacare in general, so that 26-year-olds and under cannot be protected under their parents' plans. And pre-existing conditions, there's no protection. And everybody has a pre-existing condition, women included, pregnancy, among other things. So these are the kinds of things I conveyed to this voter. And she thanked me. She thanked me at the end of it, said that she felt enlightened by me and what I had to tell her, which I appreciated. That's nice. That's nice. But what would be much nicer would have been to know which way she's going to vote. She did not tell me. I did not push her. Perhaps I should have pushed her a little bit and said, well, now that I've spoken to you, how do you feel? I could have gone there, but I didn't, because I was waiting to hear from her what she was going to say and how she was going to convey it. And the way she sounded as she said what she said when she was thanking me and saying that she, she was felt enlightened, it was hopeful. The tone of her voice was hopeful, but there was no dice on whether or not she was going to vote for Joe Biden. So, I don't know. I could have pushed. Perhaps I should have said as well, are you going to vote for Joe Biden? Do you think you will? Maybe next time if that happens again and in any other kind of call, I will be doing that. But I just want to say that's, I think, how you talk to a pro-life undecided voter. First of all, you listen to them. Second of all, you consider what they've said. And third of all, you respond with a quote-unquote big picture look at the issue, while not disregarding the kernel of what that voter believes in. The minute you disregard their belief about a really deeply personal, very electric issue like the right to choose, a woman's right to choose, you've lost that voter. I am a pro-choice person. I didn't tell her that, but I did emphasize to her that pro-life includes what she believes in plus these other things. And I did say that there's things about Joe Biden that I may not like either. But those things are outweighed by the vast majority of other things about him that are good and decent. Look, I even told this voter I had a lot of issues with him. I told her about these other issues that went on earlier in the year. Tara Reid, I still feel exactly the way I felt about that then. There's no change as far as I'm concerned. I think he definitely did it. And I even said, look, there's things about him that I don't like. But when you compare that next to the guy who is currently in the White House, there is not even a question. And I also said that we have to get to a point where we're not just voting for ourselves. Now, that's a tricky argument to make because everybody votes differently, and there are some people who are very selfish, and they are voting just for themselves. And they don't, like I said earlier, they don't care about the rest of the world. They're not going to be here anyway. Or, well, we're all going to go at some point. Or, well, why should I do anything about them? Why should I care about them? Them. There is a mindset out there like that amongst older people and some other people who aren't older. But what I said is that we also have to look at the world that we are situated in. And I said to her, I would hope that the world that you are situated in does not revolve solely around yourself. You have family members, you have relatives, you have friends, you have people who may be going through the predicament of deciding about choice, whether to keep a child or whether to make the decision. That is a very important decision for you and your own physical autonomy and choice. You may know someone who's gone through that. There are millions of people who go through these things, and we aren't living in a bubble by ourselves. We are living as part of a whole planet. And right now we're walled off because of this virus, but we are living in a society and in a world that doesn't just involve and revolve around ourselves. I know we love to think that we are the only thing in the world that matters. And I know that there's some people who do, especially in this area of town where I am. But there is a whole world out here. There was a whole world out here before you came into it. And there's still going to be a whole world out here when you have departed from it. And in this country, you've got to look at the country. And I said to her, it's the same principle as putting country before party. I said to her, it's important to put the country before yourself. And that's not to say that you should not vote on issues you care about. Absolutely, you must. You should and you must vote for the things you care about. That is not what I'm saying. What I was saying to her was that you must vote on those things plus look at the impact of what that means. You can't be pro-life, in my view, if you are anti everybody marrying. You cannot be pro-life if you are telling people who are consenting adults that they cannot marry. That is part of pro-life too, in my view. The right to happiness, the right to sharing the humanitarian and the humanity and the aspect of engaging in being happy in the world. Actualizing yourself as a human being. And part of that actualization involves partnership, love, marriage. And that's part of what life is. Now, for some people, that might be, well, come on, you're just exaggerating that. That's not the kind of pro-life I'm talking about. I'm talking about a woman's right to choose. That's the pro-life I'm talking about. But I didn't tell the voter that her view was wrong, because she has a right to her view. And her view is, look, people's views are not wrong. We may disagree with them. We may be repulsed by them. But they have a right to have a view. And if you start to argue with a voter and say, well, you don't have a right to that view, that's a road to ruin. But what I try to convey is that pro-life involves what she's talking about plus these other things. And this person is a strict voter. She's very she's a Christian who is, said that she's very much I won't say fundamentalist, but she is pretty strict, practicing Christian. I'm not going to reveal the denomination, but the point is that that's the kind of thing she was conveying. And I think that when you are phone banking, if you are doing this, and I hope you are, that when an issue like this comes up, you are able to respond to that voter respectfully. Even whether you personally agree or not, it's not the issue. The issue is that you are trying to get a voter who is undecided, and there are a few out there, not many, why Joe Biden is a better choice than I'm not voting, or why Joe Biden is a better choice than I'm going to write someone's name in, or why Joe Biden is a better choice than, well, I'm going to leave the top of the ticket blank. And I pointed out that I disagree with Joe Biden on some things, but he, in many other things, is where I agree with him. And I'm not going to, as I said, as a voter, I am not going to let these three very vigorous disagreements allow me to vote for someone who is destroying the country and destroying the planet. I said that I am willing to make a concession in order to look at the betterment of the planet and the country. And I also said to her that Joe Biden will at least listen to you as a pro-lifer. He said that he respects the Catholic teachings on this, and he respects that, but he doesn't believe that it should be conferred on women in general in the public. He doesn't believe it should be conferred on a woman. Every person is different, and he doesn't believe that pro-life should be conferred upon women. And I told the pro-life voter that. I was very honest and upfront. And that's what you have to be. You have to be honest with an undecided voter. And you know that. I'm not telling you, but I'm just reemphasizing this. So I made it clear. That's where he stands. And I said that I respect her view. I just think that for me, I have 3 or 4 things that I vigorously have issues with him on, but he is so much better in every respect than the guy you've got in there now. He's had experience before. He has done some very positive things. He has not had the best legislative record. There's no question about that. But there are some key things he has been good on. And I outlined some of that to her. I also said to her, hey, look, we have to continue to push this guy after he gets in. The job is not over by just voting for him. You've got to keep pushing him. And I said to her, you have to hold him to account. And if he doesn't do what you said he's going to do or what you want him to do, then you know what to do. And I said to her, you can get people to run. You can run for office yourself in your own district, in your city, locally, Docket, whatever, and then run on your platform. You can keep pushing politicians, Senate and House and local, to put pressure on him, on Biden if he gets in. So that's what we have to keep doing. And I said to her, one thing is Joe Biden will listen. He will listen to your view as a pro-lifer. And maybe you can push him a little way, if not all the way, but at least you will get a hearing from him. The other guy, he ain't going to listen. He doesn't even listen to his own advisors. How the hell do you expect him to listen to you? And I said to her, I have to be honest with you, miss, but a vote for anyone but Joe Biden is a vote for Donald Trump. And she said to me she couldn't stand Donald Trump. So I said it to her, a vote for anyone but, because she might have been considering third party or considering writing someone in. And I said to her, I respect that, I said that, look, you may be thinking about voting for someone other than either of these two people. And I said to her, I really think you should rethink that. And I said, because the person you're considering voting for, or who you might be considering voting for, will not win. They have absolutely no chance. So if you're so incredibly invested in a very important view, in this case pro-life, then you want to be able to make sure that that view gets listened to and either implemented or heard or actually paid attention to in some way. And I said that Donald Trump, as I said before, is not pro-life. He is not pro-life. He is pro-Trump. That is what Donald Trump is. He is pro-Trump. And he's also pro-death because of, look at the 216,000 people that he has killed. That does not square with your pro-life view, I'm sure. And she agreed it didn't. So I think I was successful in not having her vote for Donald Trump. However, I don't know that she's going to vote for Joe Biden. And that's why I said to her, a vote for anyone but Joe Biden is a vote for Donald Trump. And I actually urge people, if you are phone banking, make sure you find a way to use that line. I know that may not be, I don't know, maybe that's not in the protocol for you, in your call scripts, because they give you these call scripts. But sometimes you can be a bit more inventive and a bit more rounded, right? If you get the sense that the conversation provides an opening like this, then please use it. Because you can make a difference. You may not have that voter agree with you. It's not about agreement. It's about persuasion. These phone calls in phone banking are not about agreement. As I said earlier, if you start to go on and say, well, you know what, I'm pro-life or I'm pro-choice and I think that, if you start doing that to voters and lecturing them, kind of like how I've been ranting and lecturing for the last few minutes, this is not going to work for them. They're going to turn you off and hang up on you. The goal is to persuade, not to argue. Persuasion. That's the goal. Once you can persuade a voter, and heck, if that voter says, yes, I'm voting Biden, heck, yes, I'm voting Jamie Harrison, heck, yes, Teresa Greenfield, heck, yes, Mark Kelly, heck, yes, Sarah Gideon, heck, yes, MJ Hagar, or whomever in your state or city, then your job is done. A correction that I wish to make here. Earlier in this edition of the podcast, I said that Joe Biden wants a public option that favors private insurance. That is not quite correct at all. In fact, he wants a private option that will give competition against the private insurers. So I do want to make that clear. In fact, I'll play you right now a portion of what Joe Biden said about this very thing from yesterday in Erie, Pennsylvania.
To ease the burden on the major costs in your life, what's the average middle-class person fear most? They're trying to tear down the Affordable Care Act. We're going to build on it, adding a new health insurance option a not-for-profit public option, which is going to give private insurers real competition. We're going to increase the subsidies so premiums are lower and we can afford plans with lower deductibles and lower out-of-pocket expenses, because we're going to be able to do that with the money we take back from the super wealthy. We're going to take on the pharmaceutical companies with a plan that slashes the cost of prescription drugs by 60%. Look, folks, we're going to work with states to ensure that every 3, 4, and 5-year-olds has access to free, high-quality preschool.
Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. Stay safe, wear a mask, and go to the online store at The Politicrat at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. I'm Omar Moore.
This year's election is going to be a little different.
Instead of one election day, we now have a voting season.
That special time of year when polls can open weeks before Election Day.
When your mailbox can become a voting booth.
When how you vote is just as important as who you vote for.
But how, when, and where to cast your ballot depends on your state.
'Tis the season to be prepared.
This year, plan your vote.